Ben Borthwick, I'm the Artistic Director here at Plymouth Art Centre, and on this gorgeous evening, everyone electing to spend it inside our beautiful building. So, as has become customary over the last 6 or 7 exhibitions, we're just going to do a bit of a conversation with the artists now. Anyone, staff, or anyone who kind of joined the staff introduction may have heard David and Larry pick up on some of the points that we may or may not touch on. But it might also give you a bit of an introduction, and if you have any questions, then feel free to ask them during the conversation, but there'll also be some time for Q&A at the end. The way that I thought we might start was just these chairs. I may suddenly go feet up in the air, and don't be alarmed, it's just that these chairs, maybe slightly different weights, that's all. So I thought I'd just start by reading a short section of Fanon's introduction to Black Skin's White Mice, as a way of not only giving you a sense of Fanon's language and sort of use of language and voice. This is written in the early 60s, I can't quite remember when, do you remember? 57? Sorry, 57, okay, and then published posthumously after his death, aged 36 in 1964, I think. And it's a remarkable, I mean, he's an amazing sort of theorist, psychoanalyst, and philosopher. So this is how the book kicks off. The explosion will not happen today. It's too soon, or too late. I do not come with timeless truths. My consciousness is not illuminated with ultimate radiances. Nevertheless, in complete composure, I think it would be good if certain things were said. These things I'm going to say, not shout, for it's a long time since shouting has gone out of my life. So very long. Why write this book? No one has asked me for it, especially those to whom it is directed. Well, I reply quite calmly that there are too many idiots in this world, and having said it, I have the burden of proving it. Towards a new humanism. Understanding among men. Our coloured brothers. Mankind, I believe in you. Race prejudice. To understand and to love. And it goes on for 7 or 8 pages of the introduction, and then begins this quite dense and incredible philosophical and psychoanalytic text. But the reason that I wanted to start with that was it seems that that quite poetic and fragmented approach to language has really informed the way that you've sort of structured the narrative of these 3 films. And I just wondered if you'd say something about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was. And I was new coming to Fanon's work actually at the beginning of this project. So that was 2014. Yeah, when we started talking about this. It was Larry that brought to me the idea, and and that was the first section that I read of Fanon, and it was it's like an explosion going off in my brain, like he's kind of talking about that. Here was someone that was talking about very profound theoretical and philosophical ideas, but also was addressing them in such a poetic and direct way. And I think that way of writing really proved a template for all that we kind of start. It proved a template for the tone of each of the works. I mean, people often assume that a lot of the words that are used in the films are actually from Fanon, but of course there are things from other places. There are collage texts in there, but actually we ended up with no Fanon in there. It was mostly Larry and I's writing and kind of just different observations. I guess, mixtures of personal stories, which again was something that really informed Fanon's thinking and writing. His anecdotes become very much part of his philosophy. A bit like kind of kind of a very different angle from, say, Lacan, who used that idea of kind of seeing a can bobbing on the sea, and the idea that maybe the can sees him as much as he sees the can, and his name's Lacan. And anyway, so you know that kind of aspect of using some just this little insignificant moment in life and turning that into a philosophical idea became kind of this key moment, which Larry, you were talking about earlier when in the walk around, which is that episode where he's just in France and a little child says to his mother, "Oh look, mummy, a Negro," and that kind of in a way that's kind of at the heart of a lot of Fanon's thoughts about race and identity. That it's often imposed from outside. That this is something that, you know. And then that external imposition is then internalised and becomes kind of a part of one's psyche. And I would argue it becomes a part of kind of a white person's psyche as well. That this idea of race becomes kind of a part of you. And the thing that really constructs whiteness is blackness. So it's through this kind of through creating a Manichean divide between these places. Yeah.
And I mean that's a bit of a reversal of what Fanon goes on to present as his position in relation, you know, that there's this dialogue between black and white. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that, you know, in your previous work as well, you know, you arrived at that long before reading Fanon, which is very interesting. That it's not led by, you know, a key text, but instead that you find a truth in your own work through reading something that has been a cornerstone of post-colonial theory. Well done.
I guess.
Larry, did you have anything to add about the sort of starting point in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yes, now we're yeah, I mean, like David said, for me, my relationship with Fanon's work goes back to when I was studying on my BA, and I think I was talking to someone earlier on about this, that I was kind of rising in the academic kind of echelon of art practice and stuff, and what I noticed as I was kind of getting further with studying art, I noticed that there were fewer people of colour and fewer people from a working class background, and that added to an already kind of state of feeling kind of alienated due to the way that I would be stared at and be shocked if I had a hoodie on, or being stopped and searched like countless times, being arrested because I was black and so on. And so I guess coming across particularly black skin white masks, reading this piece of writing that came 50 plus years before me, like David said, for me it created an explosion. It was like, wow, like of all the things that I may have come across or read over the years, this here thing is explaining exactly how I'm feeling in a way that very few people would be able to understand. And that has been an important component to some of the work that I've gone on to build throughout the years. I guess what's been peculiar about mine and David's situation is the way that we have this strong bond and friendship, but then there's also a conflict of sorts as well, which we're not afraid of opening up, and that's been a great experience as far as learning more about myself, my ideas, the way that I'm thinking, but then seeing how David thinks with some of his ideas, being able to be, I guess, intimate and open up those fragile points has been very important.
And so, how is what you've just described in terms of coming from very different positions, both in terms of race, in terms of class, but also in terms of your approach to subject matter? And we might come back to the biographical seed that each of you has developed through your work. in your individual practices. We'll come back to that, but with your collaboration, which started as a performance-based project, I'm just interested in how if you started out from very different positions, then what was it that was the hinge for you to decide to collaborate, which is a big step for two artists who are working independently to come to.
Video games, comics, and hip hop.
Not so big.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might say on paper, from that kind of biography, that we have nothing in common. But actually, it comes down to kind of the lived experience of our lives. We're both Londoners. We both grew up in London, kind of in London schools, speaking London slang, and then we both ended up being very much part of both video game subculture, but also hip hop culture, and kind of both as UK lovers of the US scene, so kind of alienated from the thing we loved in some weird way. So it kind of, and we had all of those things in common, and somehow all the other stuff just seemed kind of initially almost irrelevant or interesting as kind of a subject matter for the work that we were doing, where we were looking at ideas of appropriation. And it came from this piece that I was doing, where I was trying to remember, often not being able to remember, hip hop rhymes in Freud's Final Consulting Room. That was the piece that got Larry asking me the question, but what about the producer? What about the music? Yeah, so, and that's really where our conversation began, was that moment.
Like Can's ideas, I guess in a way, for me, you introduced the Can in the way that I guess I introduced Fanon for you. And this whole idea of always kind of having a versus type matchup. Even last night we were playing Street Fighter and beating each other's asses. So, there's always this constant kind of clashing or smashing together of heads, not physically, but in a way that we're able to be very open, and that's very important. I think as an artist, if you're going to collaborate with someone, you have to be able to do that. If you don't do that, then I think you begin to hold back and you become kind of almost tactical with that. And I think there's a nurturing within what we do. There has to be. If not, then I would feel that part of what we've done here, which I think over time a lot of the ideas will unpack themselves, but that would be less genuine, or at least that's how I feel.
Definitely, I think some of that that creation through conflict is shown in this show with this combination of the glyphs and the paintings, which really we hadn't kind of considered before as something to put together. And then I think it was through a conversation with you, Ben, that it seemed like it could make sense in this context. And I think it's kind of brought another interesting aspect to the project. It's sort of almost two slightly more individual projects, so they're sort of versus each other, and out of that they gain a lot from being next to each other in a strange way.
Yeah, on that I must say I feel misled, because you showed me an image on your phone of these paintings that you were starting to do, and I imagined that this was a fully worked out body of.
They were like this big.
Yeah, this was a year ago, and then a month ago I was like, David, we need to arrange the shipping. What size are they? Like, yeah, okay. Well, I haven't yet painted them, so yeah. But that's also something that's kind of interesting. Is that you studied sculpture, been making film, video, and you've now started painting.
Well, I don't know.
Is it something about your age?
Yeah, maybe it's midlife crisis. I don't know.
No, but this is maybe sort of where to sort of move it around onto your individual practices. Onto individual practices where there's a strong biographical theme running through your film video work over the years, like using yourself as the protagonist, like yourself into the camera, then kind of developing much more complex into the narrative sense, pieces about your family history, and then Larry with the glyphs, the prints upstairs, like using your family photo archive, that's maybe a bit grand. It's family photo albums. So the archive implies this sort of broad spread. This is something incredibly intimate. And so while you talked about looking at David and registering a sort of an openness, like it seems like before you met, you were still presenting something that was from behind closed doors. And so I'm interested in the way in which intimacy and privacy is transmuted into something to present in public.
It's strange when I guess you kind of look at the points that we come from with our practice, what we studied and so on. What we studied, you studied sculpture, I studied sculpture as well. You went to the Slade, I went to the Slade, but separated by a few years. And then there is this aspect of kind of digging into that which I think most people would find uncomfortable to, but for us it kind of becomes natural, where we kind of throw ourselves into the situation, and then we do it again and again and again. But it's always different. It's always another version. It's always kind of shape shifting, almost like I guess a sample or a beat. You're going around the loop, and then that beat changes or morphs.
And maybe we're both influenced by hip hop culture to some extent, with the idea of alternate identities, or even virtual culture, like Street Fighter. You play Street Fighter while you're playing as Blanca, you become Blanca. While you play as Ryu, you become Ryu, and you try all these different faces. So you with your cloud face performance, me with Barefoot Winged Pilgrim, White Black Minstrel. It's sort of like they become these kind of alternate identities, and then. Like coming into the Fanon series, it was like, it felt quite natural to kind of adopt this kind of, is it just us, or is it a fictionalized us? It's kind of, wearing a stupid tweed suit and stuff. So like, it kind of takes you out of the present moment, and it becomes something, it kind of starts to signify something, and then we're kind of working out what it signifies. Yeah. In a kind of weird way. So,
I think you stole it, unfortunately. I wanted to be able to talk about that, but just, literally coming to the Whitechapel and seeing, the kind of video presentation of you trying to rhyme the Wu-Tang Clan's catalogue in Freud's consulting spaces. Like that, for me, there's like, what? Like, who is this person? Like, the audacity, But there's something about that makes me want to have a conversation around that, because there is a realness about that. There's a very kind of weird, uncanny, unsettling feeling, but there is something I think worthy to unpack about that. Of course, why shouldn't the Wu-Tang Clan's catalogue be rhymed inside of that space? It's important literature.
Well, I guess for me, one of the main things about that piece was about the idea of the validity of voices, like why. The idea of who the voices are that Freud would have heard, and then bringing, say, Ghostface talking about finding roaches in the cereal box, and kind of his time growing up and having to share his trousers with his brothers as they went on, and this sort of there's a self-analysis going on there in that text, which seemed to fit with what Freud stood for, but of course. It was kind of like, he wasn't the voice that Freud was listening to, but yet somehow, we can expand that. And maybe that's part of what the Fanon project is. It's sort of bringing these unheard voices together, and I think that's part of where the Gaydon project has come out, is trying to make the invisible visible.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so to unpack the Gaydon project. Following working on Fanon 2, where David and I utilised the Grand Theft Auto video game engine to film the main visuals, we realised that we put together a a style of making work that we could perhaps introduce to other communities and allow them to tell their own stories. So we work with a range of people, both in and outside of the UK. We work with paperless migrants in Oslo. We work with veterans who are in prison, as well as their families in Liverpool. We work with young people in Newcastle, female refugee group in Nottingham, and then also a friend and artist who's part of a collective I formed in the UK called the Network 11. And what's important about this for us is that we knew that we wanted to be able to allow this story to be expansive, to not simply just, you know, revolve around the two of us. We knew it was always going to be within us, but the only way for that to happen, I guess, would be through a gesture of openness, and hopefully to allow that generosity to take place through us listening, actually. Kind of turning into technicians, kind of helping to work behind the scenes to allow those stories to be said in the best way. So, you know, me coming into sessions and talking with the collaborators about how they want to say what they're saying, not telling them what to say, they instead tell me what they want to say, and then I think about, all right, how do we kind of get that sentence down, you know? So yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to have done that in the main trilogy, because although there are nuances in between that connect some of our stories, they're not our actual stories. You know?
I mean, this is really interesting, and I'm not going to locate it into quite a sort of active debate that's happening at the moment around race in museums and art practice. Related to, you know, some people may have come across debacle of it in biennial and so on. But it's really interesting the way that you're talking about authenticity and how that is often located in terms of race, but actually what you're talking about is an authenticity of experience. But at the same time, that your process is, you know, often about clashing heads. And so I'm interested in how there's, like David, for you in your previous work, there's an identification with black culture, especially through hip hop. We'll come back to gaming and race separately, because that's very interesting. And then Larry, you know, like Glyph's an example, but other work as well. And so I just wonder if you can kind of talk a little bit about how you situate the fact that you've been working together for 3 years as a white middle class artist, white working class artist, like working together and negotiating difference in a way that seems, you know, a lot more complex and doesn't fit easily into like this surprising sort of flaring up of like, quite essentialising debate around racial authenticity.
How do you do that?
Well, I think you've done it here.
Yeah. And I mean, we've both, you know, we both worked on collaborations, you know, prior to doing stuff together, and yeah, I've worked on failures projects, and I think it's only through those experiences you find out a bit more about yourself. But I'll be honest, I before meeting up with David, I had no intention of collaborating with anyone. I was really happy just making work on my own. But I think when there is an attraction across ideas that are kind of taking place, that just kind of falls into place naturally. And to unpack a bit more of my practice, I've been working with exploring my audible heritage, so by looking at my parents' record collection of high life music. Does anyone know what high life music is? Yeah. Afrobeat. Yeah, alright, cool. So Afrobeat, Nigerian sound, was created by combining sounds of high life with jazz. So looking at this strong kind of polyrhythmic flow of beats, of harmonies, with large bands, big bands, but working with, you know, the lower octaves. The main difference between high life and Afrobeat being that high life is much more upbeat. It's very, you know, it's playing with the high octaves. But anyway, I had these records that my parents used to own. They used to play, and when they were together when I was much younger, they would play them all the time. I didn't really get it. I didn't even like the music, you know. But I noticed at some point when they split up, my mum would just stop playing them. She didn't play them until the record player put away all of them. Then a few years later, probably about 11, she was kind of sprinkling them one day. Had loads of stuffs in black bags. There was this kind of almost cube looking bag of stuff, and I just kind of peered in and I saw all these records. And, you know, I've never kind of played a record properly. I'd always kind of scratched them or whatever. But for some reason, just seeing them in there, it didn't seem right that they were going to be thrown away. I asked my mum why she was throwing them away. She's like, well, we don't play them anymore. I grabbed them all, I shoved them underneath my bed. The worst thing you can do with stuff like that, because, you know, they're next to heaters, and yeah, you know what happens with vinyl. But and years later, where I'm thinking much more about the archive and origins or origin stories. So thinking a little bit about comics, but thinking about versions of how to play out one's own origins. I remember that I had all of these records, and I was getting much more into the production aspects of hip hop, of, you know, utilizing the MPC, Music Production Center, the way in which, you know, you can kind of create these gestures by, you know, hitting these velocity pressure pads that will, you know, once you've chopped up the samples, kind of give back, you know, the rhythm that you're feeling, and I created basically a beat tape, which a lot of people didn't really get. But I guess when I was talking to, the reason why I'm saying this is when I was talking to David, I was like, damn, like, you've done this thing, like, it's crazy. You know, I guess when somebody understands you, you feel like there's little for you to have to go over. And so in a way, there was something already established there. So, you know, even as far as the soundtrack for the Fanon series, again, that just kind of happened around conversation, around hype, around, I guess, understanding that, oh, you know what, like, there's something we can kind of get out of this. Like, remember that level on Super Metro where, like, you know, you hear the strings kind of just kind of come in like a little bit, like, what if we kind of had that? You know, and I love those kinds of conversations. Like, for me, that's that's how I get fired up to create things. And when you have somebody else who's doing that and also has like really strong work ethic to just get it going and get it out there, yeah, you just want to get to it.
Yeah, I wonder whether, like, at the heart of both our projects is almost a search for authenticity, like that. I mean, Larry, you with your looking at your records, the high life, it's always like a yearning for. And, you know, I've heard you say a few times to your mum, you know, why are you even here? and yet you are here, and it's like it's almost that reconciling your present moment with this history and kind of being both neither one place nor the other in some way. And maybe I've always felt like that, neither here, neither, you know, never quite embodying or being the person that I'm expected to be in the particular moment. So, you know, at my first school, like, yeah, kind of like one of the more well-off kids, like being told that I shouldn't say yo in the playground because it's a black word. Like I was told by Yao, but I was only 6, and then you know, then going to a private school and feeling like the poor boy, like, you know, all the other kids going on skiing holidays, and we're going to the Lake District, and like, it's kind of like, oh, poor me. Like, but then my fantasy spaces started to be born in those, like, kind of that Lake District became Middle Earth, and, like, you know, it became Tolkien, and kind of finding all these these alternative spaces. So then discovering virtuality and music and doing music production, like I got into kind of making beats and stuff. And I think all of that kind of stuff, and then kind of, yeah, being in a band, like, you know, always searching for kind of, yeah, I was always searching for like the authentic sound. Like, I hated Pearl Jam and I loved Nirvana because I thought Pearl Jam was just like a bunch of fakers. You know, like, you know, I loved Babes in Toyland because they screamed a lot, like, and it seemed like an authentic kind of pain, you know. And then I kind of, yeah, then hearing the Wu-Tang, it just like blew my head off. Like, it was just like, it just sounded like, what even is this? It must have been like what it must have been like to hear punk the first time, like to hear, you know, before that became like stale. It's like, you know, to hear people just kind of chopping, and then, but not just like chopping together stuff in almost it felt like when you first listen to it, it's like, this is almost random, you know, it's like, there's almost like not a beat here, and there's no, I was looking for like bass lines in hip hop, it's like, there's almost no bass lines here even. It's like, but actually, you know, but then it's taking in all this stuff like the old school kung fu flicks, you know, that was stuff that I really loved already, and then like they're referencing kind of different TV shows and stuff, and it's like, oh wow, this is like almost postmodern. It's like so it was kind of building on all these things that I really loved, and then it's like, yeah, but it's just a bunch of blokes from Staten Island just going crazy basically, and that was really inspiring, and that kind of, yeah, led to a lifelong fascination and kind of writing my MA thesis on the Lacanian view of the Wu-Tang Clan, looking at the imaginary, symbolic and real through the rhythm. But, you know, it fits, it really fits well actually. I'll put the PDFs in. But yeah, it's always such, like, you know, it's almost like the real is never here, it's always somewhere else, and that you're always searching for something. And I think that's we kind of have that in common, and that kind of, and so to look for something together, to look for a future of this conversation, to look for maybe an answer, is there an answer, then just made the most sense.
So one of the sort of authenticities, I'm not sure if it's a sibling or a cousin, is cliche, and one of the great cliches of I think any art, but especially contemporary art, is working with children.
Save the children.
That's Marvin.
Dude, I hate that take, man, every time you say it.
And also, you know, to imagine the work about what will our children inherit. You know, this is like really fragile territory, but you decide to go there, and so that's, I mean, that's, you know, just going back to what you were saying earlier about kind of opening up yourself. Yeah, that's a brave place to go. And it, I mean, I'm not going to dwell on that because I think I should open it up to the floor, but I think there is something quite, you know, important to ask, is about gender and masculinity in the films. You know, you're both dads, you're both, like, 1 and 2 is you with your kids, and then 3 is really about kind of, you know, who inherits what we're creating now. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about this particular construction of masculinity in relation to a generation of your own children. I think that's maybe more interesting than just saying where are the women. I think the female voiceover is, you know, is a very dominant presence in the films, but it's this question of fatherhood and parenthood and how you construct your masculinity.
Claire, my partner's vision for this trilogy as being like integral to the work. she really kind of conceived of the way that everything was shot and kind of helped come up with a lot of things. I mean, really, like, especially Fanon 3, like the ladies, like she is you should look at the storyboard for that. It's like, she made it basically. So it's really you could start talking about, in a strange way, the female gaze, like about her looking at us and thinking about our situation, and then and then it's Hayley's voice saying this, kind of putting that in this sort of context. And I guess, alongside that, it starts talking, what comes out of the films is very much thinking about the body, but also thinking about landscape, and thinking about our relationship to things like geological time, to the cliffs, to rock, to the sea and its history of migrations, and there's that recurring motif in all the films. So I'm not sure if that answers any questions. Yeah, should we open it up to the floor?
Yeah, this is the right moment. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask?
Intrigued how you use Fanon to begin more critique of your work. So you talk about authenticity, but it seems like the work is
for me personally, it's the nature of this collaboration. It's the nature of where two people who do find something of a common ground are coming from really different backgrounds. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't come across that from a UK perspective, not like this. And so I think that was already setting up something unique for us, but also quite daunting, a bit unnerving. But, you know, like how do you get through this? Because there isn't, you know, yeah, we can use the automotive group to think about John Comfort's work, but you know, within those types of collectives, you know, the artists, the practitioners, they're coming from a very similar, you know, background, and so how do we unpack this, which is going to be a conflict, you know? I think that's where we rely on that aspect of authenticity, is this understanding that this approach to the conversation hasn't been had this way. So why don't we try opening that up? Why don't we try utilising what stands before us through photos or imagery or video games and whatnot, and then bring that into a stage where we can hopefully begin to unpack that.
And there is an ongoing narrative in the three films, which is a sort of deconstruction of the grid, the intersections, the idea of that there's some sort of overarching power structure that we're trying to dismantle from the inside. And maybe you could read that as like a metaphor for, you know, taking our work into the art space and kind of using the white cube as a space to kind of deconstruct itself from inside. So that, I mean, that, and I think the nature of our collaboration to begin with, you know, that's conceptual work in the first place. Like, why don't we just mash our two practices together? Like that's like it automatically means that there's a different sort of agency, a different sort of even visibility for what we're talking about and what we're doing. So I think really, yeah, that it's kind of, yeah, it's all about kind of our lack of power and trying to deconstruct those powers that are kind of constraining us in order to find a way through kind of, yeah, to live a life that's less encumbered by all these kind of external kind of illusions, let's say. That's where it comes from.
Can I ask you a question about that related to video game form? Because I think one of the things interesting about video games is that liminal space that you go into where you leave your identity behind and you become something else, and there's the offer of complete kind of freedom, and Grand Theft Auto is a really interesting choice because it's that open world where you can supposedly be anything you want to be, and the narrative or the game will operate around you, which isn't actually the case because it's completely pre-programmed and
yeah, there is a sense in which like we try and talk about the fact that kind of the open world is actually a closed world and there are all these unmarked boundaries. Like even a virtual sandbox is always like, it's very much kind of boxed off, like it's only got so many haircuts. It's still very much constrained by kind of what is put in. You can't add to this situation, you know. So yeah, sorry, you were going to ask a question.
Well, it just strikes me that lots of these video games, that lots of the sequences I've seen, and I've not watched all the films yet, feature these walking through landscape thing, and you're talking about geology, and there's this thing about walking simulators, isn't there, and this kind of big critique of them and their modifications of earlier games, Half-Life 2 and stuff. I just am interested in what you found in that tension in gaming and in the form of playing, and perhaps not finding yourself another identity in it, or not finding something that represents you, and where you're taking off on a different angle. Are you taking off on a different angle to work against that form, to offer something new in that form?
I guess it's trying to question it from inside. I mean, just like we're trying to kind of question like societal structure from inside, because there's no other place to kind of start from. It's like, you know, you can't think outside of language, so you have to work with language. It's that sort of situation. And yeah, I mean, video games are very interesting in the sense that there's they're kind of an embodiment of an imaginary space. Like, you know, in some ways they're no different from a literary space, or the space of Dungeons and Dragons. It all goes on inside people's heads, but yet through its kind of visual physicality, especially with three-dimensional games like Grand Theft Auto, there's this. It's so convincing an illusion that you actually you almost want it to be more true, but then you kind of, you know, you realise that that's just procedural grass, you know, like, and if you can't pick up an individual thing, it's just a thing to walk through. It doesn't actually have a kind of a physical form, or, you know, the water, like we found this online when we were making the thing, that like there would be a beach, and in one person's version of the game, the tide would be slightly further out than the other, so one would be kind of wading through water, while on the other one it looked like he was just walking along the beach. So it's this kind of, like, you know, everything that seems solid is actually just some sort of vague thing. So yeah, trying to find ourselves within that. I think it just, everything about it starts to, the more you become part of that space, the more you realise how much it is a game space. It's a set of rules. It's not actually a simulation.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
So, you know, and that's why people who are really into games are into breaking games. They're into finding the glitches. They're into making a speed run where they can complete Zelda Ocarina of Time in 17 minutes. You know, it's these sorts of things are what drives gamers, but it's not kind of, it's sort of not the side of gaming that excites maybe philosophers. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of.
It's very real for me. It took me hours to get those suits for us. What are you talking about?
No, that's real. Yeah, gold farming is real.
Missions did that take?